The moment Commander Chadrick Sloan took his first sip of steaming coffee aboard the diplomatic vessel Neroon's Grace, he could feel two alien eyes staring at him like he'd just licked a power conduit. He lowered the mug slowly, letting the bitter heat settle in his chest. "What?" he asked, voice muffled under a breath of steam. Ambassador Veltri didn't answer immediately. The Xalaxian's emerald skin pulsed faintly, a sign of either extreme confusion or imminent vomiting. With Xalaxians, it was a fine line. "You ingest that daily?" Veltri asked. "It's just coffee." Veltri blinked vertically. "Is your heart not exploding?" Chadrick coughed and nearly spilled the mug. "What? That is an organic stimulant. Your species consumes it voluntarily and frequently." "And your cardiac organ does not rupture?" Chadrick set the mug down carefully on the console beside him. "No, it doesn't. It just wakes us up." Veltri leaned forward, antennae twitching. "You are telling me this substance, caffeine, does not cause fatal systemic overload?" "Caffeine," Chadrick corrected. "And no, unless you drink like way too much." "How much is way too much?" Chadrick scratched the back of his neck. "I don't know, maybe like 20 cups." "Depends on the person," Veltri recoiled. 20! Chadrick opened his mouth to explain further, but a sudden jolt knocked the mug over, spilling coffee across the floor. The ship's lights dimmed briefly before stabilizing. "Status report," Chadrick barked. He moved toward the nearest panel, tapping it twice. "Bridge, what was that?" "Unidentified vessel just dropped out of fold space," came the reply. "No transponder, it's not responding to hails." Veltri's skin flushed a panicked shade of violet. "Pirates? Maybe." "Stay here." Chadrick grabbed his sidearm and headed for the corridor, boots clicking against the polished alloy floor. By the time he reached the bridge, the ship's tactical officer, a squat Zarnathi named Coil, was already bringing up the external visuals. A sleek obsidian vessel hovered just outside their range, its hull lined with strange, undulating panels. "No markings," Coil muttered, "but it's definitely watching us. Are shields up?" "Yes, Commander, but they pinged us with a scan." "Great," Chadrick muttered. "Let's try again." "Open a channel." A moment of static, then a voice, rough and filtered, came through. "Human vessel, we demand your surrender. You carry stimulants prohibited in Sector 9-2. Chadrick blinked. "What? Caffeine," Coil whispered. "They're talking about your coffee. You've got to be kidding me." "Drop all stimulant-based cargo or be boarded," the voice continued. Chadrick leaned forward. "This is a diplomatic vessel." "We're not. Your crew has ingested the contraband." "You are classified as biohazardous." Veltri stumbled onto the bridge, panting. "They're the Zenthari, they're fanatics. They believe all stimulants are unnatural pollution." "Well, I don't have time to detox for a cult," Chadrick snapped. "Options?" Coil tapped at the console. "We can't outrun them. Best defense is full shield, maybe a diversion." Chadrick turned to Veltri. "Anything they're allergic to?" Veltri hesitated. "They're not allergic per se, but their species reacts violently to fermented sugar compounds. Even the smell can disable them." Chadrick's eyes narrowed. "You mean alcohol?" Veltri nodded. A plan began to form. Chadrick turned to Coil. "Do we still have the ceremonial Earth gift crates?" Coil raised an eyebrow. "You mean the bourbon?" "Exactly. Loaded into the forward launch bay." "I've got an idea." Within minutes, Chadrick stood in the launch bay beside 4 large barrels marked Kentucky Reserve. He pulled a lever and the loading clamps disengaged. A moment later, the front bay opened and the barrels drifted out into space like ancient sea mines. "Transmit a message," Chadrick said. "Let's see what these stimulant haters do when they get a whiff of American heritage." The Zenthari ship moved in to intercept. As the barrels cracked open from pressure, a thin mist of ethanol spread in the vacuum. Moments later, the Zenthari ship shuddered, halted, and began to drift. "Status?" Chadrick asked. Coil stared at the readings. "They're retreating. Their systems are shutting down. Looks like the vapors triggered a defensive purge protocol." Chadrick exhaled. "Remind me to send a thank you letter to the Bourbon Council." Veltri approached slowly. "That was unorthodox. I'm just glad it worked. Veltri tilted his head. You humans willingly ingest ethanol and caffeine. Do you not fear what these do to your organs? Chadrick chuckled weakly. You've never seen a Monday on Earth. 2 hours later, after the Xanthari vessel vanished into fold space, Chadrick sat in the medbay, nursing a bruise on his ribs from the initial jolt. A young nurse hovered nearby, carefully scanning his side. Nothing broken, she said, just bruising. You'll be sore for a few days. Add it to the list, Chadrick muttered. Veltri entered, holding a data slate. Commander, I've been reviewing your species' medical records. Oh, caffeine consumption is extensive. It is present in numerous forms: beverages, solid confections, even medicinal compounds. Yeah, it's pretty common. Why, the increased heart rate, blood pressure, dependency symptoms. Are these not deterrents? Chadrick leaned back on the cot. We don't do it because it's good for us. We do it because it helps us stay focused, awake. Sometimes we don't have the luxury of rest. Veltri considered this. You adapt through stimulation, you force alertness chemically. Sometimes, yeah, that is, deeply unsettling, Chadrick shrugged. You'd understand if you ever had to do 3 shifts in a row with nothing but a vending machine and a dying reactor core. Veltri looked down at the slate again. May I sample it? Chadrick blinked. You want to try coffee for academic purposes, he laughed. All right. But don't say I didn't warn you. Within minutes, Veltri was seated awkwardly in the mess hall, holding a tiny cup of instant espresso like it might explode. He sniffed it, twitched once, then took a sip. His antennae stiffened. His eyes widened. It tastes like burnt soil. Accurate? It is. Invigorating. Chadrick watched as Veltri took another sip, faster this time. You okay? Yes, I feel sharp, expansive. I wish to run or argue or build something. Welcome to Monday. Veltri stood suddenly. I must go write a paper. He marched out of the mess hall at full speed, nearly tripping over a chair. Chadrick picked up his own mug and smiled faintly. Still not exploding. Veltri was missing. Not lost, not kidnapped, not dissolved into some gelatinous diplomatic incident, just unequivocally, bafflingly absent. Chadrick stood in front of the last place the Xalaxian had been seen. The auxiliary hydroponics bay, door ajar, faint scent of citrus, and something vaguely electrical floating out. He tapped the control panel. No response. He gave the door a nudge. It hissed open halfway, then jammed with a mechanical wheeze. Why is this always how it starts? He muttered, ducking under the half-open panel. Inside, the hydroponics deck looked like a science fair gone feral. Dozens of nutrient tanks had been pushed aside. Several alien plant species normally confined to their growth trays were scattered across the floor. A few had sprouted wildly, curling up the walls in unsolicited enthusiasm. And there, in the middle of it all, was Veltri seated cross-legged, surrounded by 7 steaming mugs lined in a circle. You've got to be kidding me. Veltri didn't look up. His antennae were rigid, eyes slightly dilated, hands trembling just enough to suggest either revelation or cardiac distress. I have discovered something, he said. Chadrick stepped carefully through spilled soil and what might have been mildly carnivorous ferns. Is it the importance of sleep? Sleep is irrelevant now, Veltri replied. The third blend bean origin from the region you call Sumatra has altered my temporal perception. I believe I am now capable of reading in 3 dimensions. That's not a thing. Veltri looked up, eyes unusually glossy. It is for me. Chadrick crouched down. How long have you been in here? I began my study cycle shortly after our encounter with the Xanthari. That was approximately 32 hours ago. You haven't slept in 32 hours. I was close once. But then I discovered the espresso variant with nitrogen infusion. It caused a minor tremor in my left eye, which I interpreted as a sign of progress. You've had 7 cups in here alone. 8. I drank 1 before arranging the others for meditative symmetry. Chadrick sighed and stood up. All right, that's it. You're detoxing. Veltri blinked rapidly. I refuse. I am learning more per hour than I have in years. I composed a thesis on human neurochemical absurdities using only my left hand and a stick of celery. That's not even never mind. Come on. It took 15 minutes, 2 buckets of cold water, and the promise of a controlled testing environment before Veltri agreed to move. Chadrick led him to the medical bay, where the ship's physician, Dr. Kwan, was already prepping a diagnostic table. Dr. Kwan eyed Veltri skeptically. He's twitching. He's been awake for over a day and thinks coffee unlocked a new axis of reality, Veltri nodded. I also believe I briefly understood the concept of jazz. Dr. Kwan turned to Chadrick. And this is your fault, indirectly. I gave him 1 cup. He escalated. I'll start a neurochemical flush. He'll hate it. Good. Veltri was still muttering about caffeine-induced transcendence as Dr. Kwan strapped him to the table and attached a monitoring node to the base of his neck. I must say, Veltri murmured, your species' willingness to exploit biological instability for productivity is both horrifying and admirable. Chadrick leaned against the wall. We call it surviving deadlines. An hour later, once Veltri had been sedated and the last of the caffeine had been flushed from his system, Chadrick made his way to the bridge. The lights were dimmed to artificial dusk standard ship cycle, but the air carried a hum of tension. Coyle looked up from his station. Scanners picked up something weird in the debris field left by the Xanthari. Weird how? Unusual radiation signature. It's not standard Xanthari tech. Could be a probe, could be something else. Send a drone. Already did. It's not returning telemetry, Chadrick frowned. That's new. Want to check it out? He hesitated. Veltri was down for the count and the diplomatic mission was already delayed, but curiosity was a powerful motivator, particularly when it smelled like trouble. Prep a shuttle. Half an hour later, Chadrick was suited up and piloting a 2-seater reconnaissance pod through the edge of the debris field. The twisted remnants of the earlier skirmish drifted around him. Cracked hull plating, scorched fragments of solar shielding, a few half-melted comm relays. Nothing unusual until the scanner pinged. He adjusted trajectory and drifted closer. The object was spherical, about the size of a basketball, matte black with thin lines etched into the surface. It didn't emit visible light, but his sensors were registering low harmonic pulses, something between a heartbeat and a signal. He activated the retrieval arm and gently scooped it into the containment cradle. Coyle, I've got it. Back aboard the Neroon's Grace, the sphere was transferred to the auxiliary lab. Tech officer Riza, an irritable Leferi with a fondness for magnetic puzzles, was already waiting. Looks dormant, she said, not looking up from her calibrator. It pulsed when I got close. It's got a low-energy feedback loop. I've seen this kind of thing before. Alien black box tech, usually logs data or monitors environments. Xanthari, not their style, too elegant. They like sharp edges and aggressive fonts. Chadrick folded his arms. So who planted it? Riza tapped the sphere gently. Maybe someone watching what happens when a human diplomat disables a Xanthari warship with alcohol vapor and caffeine. Great. 2 hours later, the sphere began to glow. Riza hadn't touched it. No one had. It just started pulsing, slow at first, then faster, until it emitted a sharp tone and projected a holographic interface into the air. Chadrick leaned in. That's a language matrix. Riza's antennae twitched. And it's adapting fast. The projection shifted, suddenly forming recognizable symbols, letters, then words, then a sentence. Human cognitive anomalies, confirmed, stage 2, initiate. Chadrick exchanged a glance with Riza. That doesn't sound friendly, he said. The projection vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The sphere's surface rippled, then cracked just slightly, releasing a faint hiss of gas. Riza stepped back. That's not good. Chadrick tapped his comm. Seal the lab, initiate quarantine. The door locked behind them. Alarms didn't blare yet, but the internal atmosphere adjusted automatically, scrubbing for particulates. Riza moved to scan the gas. Chemical signature resembles ethanol, vaporized, but it's laced with a compound I don't recognize. Is it harmful? Not to us. But if someone were watching how humans react to certain compounds, they're testing us. Outside the lab, the ship's external sensors lit up. 3 vessels had just dropped out of fold space. No transponders, no signals. Chadrick looked at the sphere, then at the readouts. "Riza, how fast can you disable that thing?" She was already pulling tools from a drawer. "Fast enough if it doesn't explode. Good. Because I think we're about to meet whoever sent it." The lab's internal fans kicked into high gear, whining faintly as they pulled the gas toward the filtration vents. Riza crouched over the cracked sphere, her gloved hands already working the seal apart with a small prying tool. Chadrick stood at the observation screen, watching the trio of ships that had just emerged from fold space. They weren't broadcasting, but they didn't need to. The design alone said enough. They were smooth, uninterrupted ovals of deep violet metal, lacking any visible propulsion or weaponry. No windows, no markings, just silent, hovering verdicts. "They haven't moved since they arrived," Chadrick said. "They're watching," Riza replied without looking up. "Probably waiting to see if we melt, mutate, or start levitating. Anything in the gas, traces of ethanol. The rest is a neural stimulant I haven't seen before. It's not triggering any alarms, which is annoying because it should. Humans safe? Barely. A little more concentrated and it'd start torching synapses. You think they tested it on us because they expected it to fail? No. I think they were hoping it wouldn't." Chadrick turned back from the window. "So they're trying to figure out how far they can push us before we break." "Exactly." Riza leaned back, finally pulling the core from the sphere. A soft hum filled the room. "And if I'm reading this right, they've been studying more than just caffeine." "How much more?" Riza tapped the small core against the bench and a flickering projection formed. It was a catalog of substances, some familiar, like theobromine, acetaminophen, capsaicin. Others were alien but listed with human neurochemical responses beside them. They've been tracking how humans respond to everything from chili peppers to sleep deprivation. They're not just watching, they're mapping us. Chadrick crossed his arms. "Why?" Riza stood up, brushing debris from her jumpsuit. "Because no one understands how you're still alive." A low chime interrupted them. The bridge was pinging a direct channel. "Go ahead," Chadrick said, tapping the comm. Coyle's voice came through tense. "One of the ships just launched a probe. It's not armed, but it's headed straight for us. Let it dock. I want to see what they're sending. Are you serious?" "If they wanted us dead, they wouldn't bother with probes," Chadrick said. "Prep Bay 3. Riza, bring the core." The docking bay was already sealed and pressurized by the time they arrived. The probe had latched on silently moments earlier. It was barely the size of a suitcase, resting on the floor like a forgotten delivery. 2 arms extended from its sides, folded neatly, holding a single object, a mug. Chadrick squinted. "Is that?" Riza took it, scanned it, and nodded. "It's clean, just water and a compound similar to caffeine. Not identical, but close in structure." Chadrick took the mug, glanced at it, then looked back at the probe. The front of it shimmered suddenly, and a screen flickered on. A face appeared, triangular, with skin like polished stone and eyes like molten quartz. It blinked once. "You survived stage 1, the voice said, flat, genderless, accentless. "We did not expect this." "Who are you?" Chadrick asked. "We are the Catharn. We observe biological adaptation across unstable species." "Unstable?" Riza muttered. "You ingest volatile stimulants. You endure extreme sleep cycles. You self-administer toxins in controlled quantities to remain functional. Your physiology is inherently contradictory." Chadrick rolled his eyes. "So you dropped an alien energy drink on us and waited to see if we grew extra limbs. We hypothesized collapse. Instead, we observed performance enhancement. You drugged my science officer into a 3-dimensional jazz enlightenment," Chadrick snapped, "and nearly induced cardiac arrest in a Xalaxian diplomat. The Catharn didn't react. That was not our intention. We underestimated the versatility of your neurochemistry." Riza crossed her arms. "You could have asked. Data gathered through voluntary submission is frequently skewed. Observation under duress yields cleaner metrics. Chadrick shook his head. You tested us like lab animals. You are the only species we have encountered whose nervous system adapts upward in response to stressors. Every other known civilization resists alteration. Yours embraces it. Chadrick set the mug down. You've got your data. Now get out of our airspace. The Catharn paused. Your request is noted. We will withdraw. The screen blinked off. A moment later, the probe detached itself and drifted weightlessly toward the outer bay doors. Riza tapped the console to initiate its ejection. Chadrick waited until the last blip on the scanner vanished before exhaling. Think they'll come back? Riza asked. Not like this. He rubbed his temple. They didn't want to kill us. They wanted confirmation. Of what? That humans are somehow too stubborn to die the normal way. Later that day, Veltri sat upright in the medbay, groggy and blinking. I feel as though I've experienced a week in the wrong order. Welcome back, Chadrick said. You missed a visit from another species that thinks we're walking paradoxes. Veltri rubbed his eyes. Were they wrong? No, Chadrick admitted, but I don't think they'll be bothering us again. Veltri turned toward the window, watching starlight drift across the glass. I believe I understand now, he said quietly. This is why your kind succeeds in chaos. You do not avoid it, you metabolize it. Chadrick raised an eyebrow. We don't do it on purpose. That makes it worse. They sat in silence for a moment. Veltri cleared his throat. May I have tea? Chadrick grinned. Caffeine-free, Veltri sighed. Disappointing. They laughed. The tension which had gripped the ship since the Xanthari encounter finally began to release. The strange probe, the gas, the alien curiosity, it had all led to a single conclusion. Humanity, for all its flaws, wasn't just surviving in the galaxy. It was confusing it into speechlessness.